I am so excited to introduce to you our guest for today here in Thriving in Construction, the podcast. She started her career as a counselor in the school system for almost 15 years. But after some time, she decided to shift and began working full-time in her father's construction company. Since then, she engaged on different areas throughout the company, where she eventually acquired her general contractor's license. Let us all welcome Dr. Mecias Murphy, co-owner and president of JA&M Development Corporation.
Good morning. I'm very happy to be here, Patricia.
I'm very happy and blessed with your presence, who you are, what you have been able to accomplish. So can you please tell us a little bit about your company? How did you get into construction and what you guys are doing? You are super successful. Tell us more, enlighten the audience.
Sure. So I was exposed to construction at a very young age. I would say my earliest memory, some people have their earliest memory of being holding a toy or what have you. My earliest memory is actually being on a job site with my dad, on a construction job site. And ever since we were little, we'd always be at the yard, doing the labor, picking up pins, this or the other. So instead of summer school, it would be construction summer school. And so early onset as far as the exposure to construction. And then it's interesting because the construction industry is very cyclical. So none of us, the siblings, we said, no, we're not going to do construction. Yes, we'll help dad along, whatever you need, but we're going to do other things.
You felt the stress as kids, right?
Yes.
That he had.
Yes. So fast forward, I went into education and counseling. And then my dad, out of nowhere, he says, you know what? I think I'm going to retire. What do you mean you're going to retire? So I go, Dad, hey, look, I know we can do something really neat together. I'll stop with education, put that on the side, and let's do this together. So we started doing some things together. My siblings then started coming probably about a year or two after. And my dad said, you know what? I think you all should probably open up a separate company, and I'll kind of be in the background, but you all can probably do this. So my dad passed away in 2011, and from 2011 to now, we've grown from, I would say, probably doing mid-rises, 4 to 7 stories, to now in Hollandale, largest mat pour foundation in the last 25 years, a 40-story building. So there's been a lot of growth, and my mom also works with us in the business. And I would say the most rewarding part of our business is that even though we do big buildings and all that, we're still able to keep a very family feel within all of us that work together in the company. So that's real special.
Wow. It is special. What would you say is the secret to running a successful family-owned business? Because typically that's rare to do. There's a dynamic, and many times it's hard to have crucial conversations as to performance. I mean, it's hard to do it with your employees that are not part of your family. And how do you do that? How do you guys, what's the secrets to 3 things that have been the secrets for you guys to be successful as a family-owned business?
Respect, communication, love. Those 3 are key.
And tell me an instance where that actually was.
So we don't all the time see eye to eye. There's different things that we will see differently. So then we sit down, we talk about it. There's times that one of us may not have a great day. The timing might be off. Last week, I could say even up to last week, I'm not going to go into details, obviously, but last week, and that love piece, that understanding, one of us, it's a give and take. And one of us, we never hang up, if that makes sense. You stay to it, you stick to it. You might say, hey, why don't we talk about this later? Table it, right? And then we'll bring it back to the conversation. But it's all about those 3 pieces. It's about being respectful to each other, keeping the communication open, and definitely loving each other. other. But true love, not.
No, I
and love is, I know people might describe it differently, but I think it also outpours of our faith, my faith. That has a lot to do with
to
it.
love and be loved. It's what we all want.
Yeah.
And that love piece, I'm thinking comes with empathy.
Yes.
Compassion towards the self and the other person.
Absolutely.
And at the end, forgiveness.
That's a big piece. You have to be able to do that and get past that.
Get past that when you put your ego on the side.
Absolutely.
And that tells me that you have been married to the greater goal of the entity, not the self.
That is a key component that you've placed right there.
It's not about me. It's about we.
Yes.
And what we're creating and the impact that we have in this community.
Yes.
Right? Now, your father, you said that he said one day, I'm going to retire. How many years before he passed did he say that?
10.
10. And in your mind, what do you think prompted him to say that in a way that maybe was a surprise to you? What was happening to him, his emotions, that he said, I'm done?
To be honest, I think he just never had the right partners in his life. That's what I contributed to. And he had the age, he could. I think before he passed, he was able to see how something could work together the way it's supposed to.
So partnership, what do you think is key when somebody is going into a business and, a journey, and they decide, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, let me partner with someone, because that is key.
It is.
People don't realize that in business, when the stress shows up, people really show who they really are under stress.
It's true.
And a lot of times we don't have an opportunity to see that of the person when this is my best friend, but you've never been in a stressful situation where maybe money is shaking you. And a lot of times this is when people really show who they are. So what's key for a successful partnership, in your opinion, or what should we avoid when we're partnering with someone, since you've been able to see and experience both in a way?
So I think like-mindedness is an important feature that at the very least, the goals that you have for the company are similar. One of the reasons that initially my dad and I spoke about was very specific that certain amounts would go to charity, would go to faith-based organizations. And that was in essence a foundation. So if you have partners that might not view that the same way, it can definitely cause some strife.
Contribution.
Yes.
How much of what how did you decide that?
So it's based on each job that we get. It's a certain percentage off of every job
of the revenue or the net profit?
So the net profit.
And what if the project doesn't give you the profit that you thought, or maybe
we still contribute personally,
but not the company, right? If it doesn't make sense, then. So is there a set percentage, or is there at least this much?
We sit down, we talk about it. It varies, it's variable, but the key is that it's always consistent.
Amen. That's great. So you were in education for how long?
I want to say about 15 years. Full time.
And I've known you for a while, and I know that you're passionate about it. You're passionate about giving and helping other people and helping people grow. I mean, it's in your DNA. So how do you marry education and construction?
So there's different facets, right? There's your everyday interactions with employees, with I'll just name employees for now. As you're interacting and you see different gifts, you try to really encourage those components, and then you say, okay, well, maybe this person's not doing so well in this area, but maybe this area would really give them success in that. So it's really being aware of a team's gifts and talents. So I think there's some teaching, there's some education. We value, what's the word? And in the education world, they call it continuing education, but that's not necessarily
growth.
The case. But yes,
growth, the desire to grow, the passion for growth.
So try to, if anyone asks, hey, we want to go to this and see this, or we always give them the opportunity to do that. So that's all, that's a key component. Then there's also organizations like the Boys and Girls Club and Epic Foundation, in which the education piece is valued not just on a college track, but also on a trade track as well. And thinking of the trades as a first choice versus just a backup.
Because you guys are in the trade. Basically, can you elaborate a little bit about what shell means?
Sure. So the shell piece. So JA&M, when we say JA&M is a shell contractor, what we're saying is that is in essence the main skeletal of the building. It includes the concrete, it includes the rebar, it includes the blocks. So when you see a building with the blocks, let's say that it's up, that's what shell means. Sometimes we'll include stucco, and what stucco is just that layer that goes over the block to make it nice and smooth, or different shapes, however the client may want.
And we always say that the success of the project is in the shell, because the shell, it's going to tell you time-wise if you're really going to make it or not. Because it's not only the shell, but it's also the coordination with other trades. Because you cannot just go run all your concrete up to the top and then forget about all the mechanical, electrical, plumbing,
Correct.
and coordination with windows and this. I mean, there's a lot that goes on when we are right.
Yes, because of some, depending on the designs, some what we call sleeves go through the concrete elevations or within the blocks, and those areas have to be coordinated and teamwork with the other trades and play nice in the sandbox.
And every little thing, every little measure counts, because when you're in one or two levels and you make a mistake on the layout, it's not that noticeable. But when you go 40 floors,
sure,
you make a little mistake. You're not plumb. Your wall is not plumb. I mean, to the perfection practically. Up there, the mistake is huge.
It can be, depending on where and
costly.
What. Yes.
We don't want to, and so Surfside building. I know you guys have done high rises along the coast. What do you think happened there?
So I've been asked that a lot ever since.
I didn't know.
Yes, I've been asked that a lot. And so I never and even when the FIU bridge collapsed, you get asked these questions, and I don't like usually going out there, and because there's so many components, and you as an engineer know that, especially as it relates to the shell, and that's what I can speak to. That's what I like speaking to.
And at the end, it's not, this is not, we haven't done an investigation. So
exactly. And that's where I tend to hesitate. But what I like doing it to folks is explaining the process, especially as it relates to shell. So it doesn't just start off and then you just build it sporadically and that's it. You start off with plans, and those plans have reviews that go, they're done by certified engineers that have stamps, and then goes to the building department, and those are reviewed by additional folks. And then we get the plans, and then we start building, and then we have inspection based on those plans. And there's multiple inspections, sometimes multiple inspectors. One can be what they call a threshold inspector if it's a big job and they want someone that's just for that job. That threshold inspector has to keep a log to be reviewed by the city or the
right.
County. There's a lot of steps.
Checking points.
Now, you also have, when a building's done, there's also a maintenance feature.
Right. But before that, before we get into maintenance, you have the drawings are done based on a study of the soil.
Correct. Yes.
And that's another component. Yeah, you. It's like one person relies on whatever the other person was done.
Correct.
Because it was approved, so we say, okay, it should be good. It's back to the standard.
Correct. So in essence, contractors, whether they're a GC, whether they're a trade, we have to follow what the plans that are
and the code. But my perception is that building was up for a long time.
Yes.
So maybe the rebar got affected by the location where it is. Okay. Maybe the maintenance piece was not done according to.
There's so many variables. So that's why when I'm asked the question, I like going through the whole spiel, because there's so many variables and so many factors.
And sometimes maybe unfortunately, we wait until something happens that is drastic to make changes somewhere. But a lot of times the process that, we go through a lot of scrutiny when we are building. There's a lot of inspection. But I'm not sure how much of that process is continued if there's a protocol for a building in this location, building this way and that way, and for the maintenance. You know how we do it with cars and machinery?
Yep.
Buildings, it's an expensive asset also.
Absolutely.
And maybe there's a protocol that has to be created to follow certain maintenance procedure that will require money, and that money needs to be respected so that it happens the way it's supposed to happen. Sure. A lot of times when we don't maintain, the problem just gets bigger and bigger. Sure. It just doesn't disappear, right?
No.
So I'm curious as to what we're going to learn. But I have to say, even with the bridge collapsing, I knew the company. There's so many moving parts.
There are.
There's so many moving parts.
And I remember when that happened, I was asked, and then I went through the whole thing. So I said, there are so many different. One has to really wait until a report and investigation. And I guess I was really saddened when the news just immediately went for the contractor, because you haven't done a report. You haven't done an investigation. There's so many things to investigate before really putting it out there.
This is what and this is part of the lack of knowledge people have. Mm-hmm. It's so easy to go blame the contractor.
Right.
In a building that was done for, 40 years. Mm-hmm. It was undergoing 40 year certification. It doesn't collapse. But these are some of the things that affect the industry. Right. What is really sad is the people that lost their lives there.
Yes.
And it goes to say how important is what we do. And I'm not sure if we're paid enough for the risk and the liability that we have and the responsibility. Because a lot of times, how people bargain on I'm imagining, because I've seen this. A property management company asks for pricing to maintain the building, to do X, Y, or Z, and it's a chopping block. Whoever is the cheapest person, not necessarily the most qualified. But when you go to the doctor, it's your life. You don't make that kind of decision. And based on who's the cheapest person that can take care of my life. But in a building, we just don't. I think we need to raise the value of what goes on in a field, in the construction industry, in the construction job site. Even what you guys do. How many employees did you have at a given point for that 40-story building that you just finished?
So at any given point, the footprint was small, but I would say probably 80 to 100.
And tell me about the safety of these employees when they're in floor number 35.
Well, no, floor number 35 is the same type of safety as anything over 6 feet. You have to make sure that you're tied in with your harness, and all the safety protocols for life are met, and it's a zero tolerance policy for fall hazards, for sure, because it could cost their lives.
There's a lot of planning that goes into place and a lot of resources that are spent to make sure that everyone, and this is what we're supposed to do. So a lot of people don't know what really goes on. We don't talk about all the projects where nobody died.
Correct.
We don't.
Wins.
We don't talk about that enough. That nobody died. That everyone went back home the same way they came in.
Exactly.
It needs to be celebrated.
I agree with you. Yeah. I completely agree with you.
It needs to be celebrated. Do you have any regrets in the decision of changing from education to construction?
I don't, because I don't think I really left either. It was just a matter of which one am I doing more of than the other. To me, it's a merge of both worlds. I feel I'm always teaching in one way or another.
Annie, I know you and I have a passion for diversity and inclusion and a passion for workforce development, helping those in most needs, give people opportunity that they never even thought that it was possible.
Teach them how to fish.
Teach them how to fish. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that in this journey.
So very, I think I mentioned before, very involved with the Boys and Girls Club, Associated Builders and Contractors, as well as the Epic Foundation. And the uniqueness about those three overlapping is that the Boys and Girls Club, they have different programs involved that include construction. It includes going into the clubs and exposing young teenagers, 13 to 18, to the construction trades. Before COVID, we were able to go in and show them aspects of concrete. I partnered up with Right Way Plumbing. They also had gone in there, and we were in the process of getting more contractors to that specific club. There's ones, depending on where you go, different ones involved. So one of the newest pieces is really trying to expose students that are at that pre-apprenticeship age to the trades, but now a little bit more really getting their hands dirty, if you will. So last year, Boys and Girls Club partnered with Habitat for Humanity. So aside from getting their Safety 10 OSHA card, they also learned certain aspects of the construction trade, and they also participated in helping build a home. So they had that aspect. So
at what age?
Those 16 and 17.
Okay.
So that, along with Associated Builders and Contractors, that also teaches them certain components about safety. And the EPIC Foundation, which is also in contact with Miami-Dade County Public Schools. We're trying to get more involved with that pre-apprenticeship age and being able to teach them not just classroom experience, but actually practical experience. So then they can then grow and in connection with a lot of our members that we both know, to be able for the students to eventually be able to have a job.
Yeah. And tell me about a success story that you've seen so far.
So there's many, but one in particular that stands off the top of my head is with specifically a student that started with a crane company when they were, I would say they were 16, 17. They went through that program, and then they got a job making close to $22 an hour when they were 18. And then learning more, whatever, they're about at $25 an hour now. So that's just one, right? But we need more folks in the industry involved and willing to bring younger students on to learn the ropes.
Right. On their job sites.
Yes.
Because they need the job. These are not people that can wait years before they get their first opportunity,
Yes.
because they have to produce to feed the family as a priority. And when you see in your company someone that has a potential, what do you do? Because I know you're looking out for talent in your own company. Have you had the experience of someone in the field had some experience or some talent or potential and that person was identified and taken through a process of mentorship? Have you had that experience?
So that happens all the time, right? You have constant laborers that learn to go to assistant carpenters, that then go to carpenters, that could then go to foremen. So I mean, that's ongoing. That's all the time. And then as far as an upper management, then you have foremen that have gone to superintendents. And then we also have, I would say, in the field, more than half probably are younger than 40. So we definitely practice what we preach as it relates to really trying to get the younger generation in.
And what's your take on the shortage of labor the industry is suffering? I mean, it's getting bigger and bigger.
It is. And this that I'm talking about is one aspect of how we can, because you've got not just the shortage, but you also have the aging workforce, and there's not enough information out there still that really explains to young people, you do have another option. You do have another first choice to be able to decide to go into it as a career versus just a job.
Yeah, that's the job we have, to bring awareness of what the industry can do for somebody. And the opportunity is available. And it can give, I have known many people that are started in the industry as a laborer and have become, I don't know if it's the case with anyone in your family, but they have become business owners without even going to school.
That was my dad.
That was your dad. Mm-hmm. And your dad was a shell contractor too?
He started in the concrete joist business, actually, and then later on in the shell. But that's what he did while we were growing up.
How proud are you of your father?
Very much so.
Tell me why.
He was someone that, perfect example, he would tell me, Annie, you see that wall? I go, yeah, Dad. He goes, it's built out of blocks and all that, or that door. And it might be hard to go through right now because it's closed, but if you keep pressing it hard enough, you'll eventually go through. And so the admiration for his determination, for his drive, love for us, unconditional love. So when I mentioned that love piece, that's from both my mom and my dad. They showed us unconditional love, regardless of what we did or what have you. They were always there for us, no matter what.
And it shows in you. The love, you are love. From my experience with you, you are love. It comes out of your eyes.
I'm so glad because I think that ties in also with my faith, right? Because having had parents that showed that, it was very easy for me to say, you know what, my God loves me, and he's there for me. So when you say that, there are no words.
How important it is for parents to show kids exactly that unconditional love, where, before as they're growing up, even
and unconditional love doesn't mean that you're not, when you do something wrong, that you're not disciplined.
No,
that's different. That's totally different.
But that's love too.
But I'm just saying, a lot of people say, oh, okay, that means that you can do whatever you want. That's not the case, because yes, and you're right, that is love, because that helps you future-wise to be disciplined, to take feedback, because a lot of times people do not take feedback, and they're not. How can you truly be a leader if you can learn to follow at some point?
You have to be able to know how to follow, and follow without grudge. So we were talking about unconditional love, and we were talking about, what was that in your life? Because I really believe what parents do to our kids, and that doesn't mean not being disciplined, but with what it does, it helps so much with who they become, their self-esteem, and what they're able to create later on. And of course, nobody can give what they don't have. So if your father or your mother didn't act the way you would have wanted, I'm sure they wanted, but nobody gives what they don't have.
It's almost the same thing as you don't know what you don't know, and the exposure the young people need to the construction industry. You don't know it if you've never been exposed to it.
Yeah. So what's discipline for you?
Discipline, I would say a key factor would be that your yes is yes and your no is no. What you say, you do. And so you discipline your life enough to make sure that you're able to come through with those commitments. You don't finish until you're done. So that requires discipline. And discipline in every aspect. It's about keeping a balance with emotional, physical, mental, spiritual, all those areas make you as a person. So you need to try to be disciplined in each of those lives. I don't always succeed, but it's a matter of trying to keep that balance.
And in your experience, because I know, I think we're all construction people, they always say that they're doing great. And nobody really talks about the pains and the challenges that the companies have. But I believe they're more often, or they're more frequent than the successes. And probably the failures, right, are just a stepping stone into the success. So I want to talk about the challenges that as a company you've seen. You've been in another industry, educational. You have seen there's different kind of stress, obviously. But what have been some of the challenges that you have seen? And why don't we talk more among each other about the challenges and the pains that we're going through, because they're there. There's a reason why this industry is second highest in suicide. And there's a reason why most companies fail.
So those are the hard questions, right? The ones that no one wants to talk about. So I think that's part of the component of being able to talk about it. So it's a very high stress, high intense, high schedule driven industry. So depending on I don't want to say which part of the coin you're in, but I think I could attest that schedule piece is for all the trades, including the GCs, and affects the owners and everyone. So I think where I maybe see it in my own life is in times that I may or should have listened or shown a kinder, more patient word to an employee, a worker, a family member. I didn't. And so to avoid those kinds of components, I think everybody has to be very real about when they do need that break. When do they need that vacation? When do they need that time off? And being real to themselves about that, and being able to schedule those times away to regroup and to be able to refresh. So I think that's the biggest part for me. thinking, being honest about where you are and when you need that time away or that break, because the reality is it is a very high stressful industry. And basically you have to learn to be in that type of environment. And if you're not, that's part of the industry. There's nothing really that you can take away. What you can control is, when do I need that break to be able to recoup and be able to be at my best?
Right. And in that line, what do you think is the biggest pain that you have as a shell contractor in the industry? Or the one that stresses you the most, or keeps you up at night, or the one that you're more afraid of, that you want to avoid?
You know what? Probably the biggest part is always the safety. You want to make sure that everybody gets home. I think that's probably the biggest component, because aside from it being such a high, a quick schedule driven, you have to make sure that those safety protocols are in place, and you want to make sure that everybody gets home. So I would say probably that. But if you follow everything that you're supposed to, and you make sure that that every job site follows the same protocol, but yeah, I think there's always in the back of your mind that concern.
And so what's the second or the third?
I don't know. I think initially, when we first started, I think this is probably for everyone, that balance of bidding. How much do you bid? Are you bidding all the time? Your bid calendar and the amount of jobs that you get, because you want to make sure that what you say yes to, that you do it. Yes.
That you have the capacity. Mm-hmm. So backlog versus capacity. What about cash flow? That has never an issue for you guys?
I think we've always been able to control that fairly well.
So you always get paid?
So no, we don't all, we're in construction.
That's what I'm saying.
It varies. Depending on the job, right? Depending if it's a municipal that's 60 days, I think it's a matter of making sure that the balance of jobs that you have, some, pay earlier than others. Make sure that not all your jobs are those 60-day jobs. So
what's the role that you have in your company?
So I would say that my biggest role includes forecasting, backlogs, the financial component, the contracts, change orders, anything dealing with liability, and anything dealing with finances.
But in terms of backlog, is your piece business development, or is your piece estimating?
So business development. On the business development, I come in on certain components on the estimating piece.
To review the bid or something?
No, it just the type of job. Depending on the type of job, I'll be called in.
So tell me, who is your ideal general contractor? What does that company look like?
Oh, characteristics, you're saying?
Yeah, not the name.
Okay,
no.
characteristics.
I don't want to...
I do need to stay in business. Okay, so
oh, Annie, you mentioned so,
but you didn't mention me. Yeah. So
no. I just want to know, what does that company look like? What do they have that makes you feel at ease that we're going to have a great relationship? It's an ideal partner.
So team player, work ethic, and integrity as far as payment.
So payment is important.
Of course. How can we can't finance the jobs.
So team player, work ethics. What's that for you?
Which part?
Work ethics.
That just basically the same thing that I've said, that people say what they mean and mean what they say they do. If they say they're going to do something, that they do it, and they work at their max to do and complete it, just like we will. So
reliable, and that they are fast paced on the contract, that they don't delay you, basically. Is that what you're saying?
So that part is just part of an overall project, what everybody wants. So, nobody wants to be delayed on a project. So when I'm saying work ethics, I'm talking about in your interacting as a team player, that I can count on you, Patricia, that if you say, hey, we're going to have this tomorrow, so I can do this, that I can count on your word.
Yeah. So accountable and reliable.
Yeah.
Annie, what do you think is the biggest challenge a woman has in construction?
So I think what I've seen, and I'm just going to say from the woman's perspective, I think some women try to be what they're not. And I think it's important to stay true to who you are, work hard, and let everything, the chips fall where they may, if you will. I think that's something that I learned from my dad. And I think there's that piece of what you were talking about as far as self-esteem that comes through. So I know not everybody has that. But I think that's probably, I would think, in speaking with other women, that's probably one of the hardest things is just being able to have that that sureness of themselves and that unconditional love that we talked about before. I think that was really critical in me to be able to, because Dad and Mom said, whatever you want to do, you can, you just put your mind to it. So I carried that mindset always. So in my dealings and talking with other women, I think that's where is just that sureness of themselves, of that competency of their knowledge of what they already know and being able to communicate that in a way that's true to themselves.
So when you say some women try to be who they're not, and I get you, but I don't want to assume.
Sure.
So before I assume, and we can engage in a little conversation, can you give a few examples of what do you mean by that?
So I've seen some women in a construction meeting and then one-on-one or what have you, and they're two totally different people. So that's what I mean by being something that they're not, being inconsistent in their own personality.
So give me an example. She is this way in one-on-one and she is that way in a group meeting.
No, saying inconsistent, just maybe if we were having like a one-on-one, okay, yes, we can go ahead and do that and just have a very cordial kind of meeting. But then in a meeting with multiple people, then feel that they have to be the voice in the room to overcompensate, I don't know, for whatever they may be feeling at the time. So what I'm saying is be who you are in front of others and by yourself.
I think my perception, because I've experienced that too. Sometimes women, because maybe the industry or maybe an experience with someone, or maybe it's a self-esteem issue, or maybe it happens to men too. I think it does. You want to adopt a personality that you think is the one that is going to give you the power. Mm-hmm. And sometimes some women that adopt a more masculine, personality, even though that's not who they really are in the essence,
Sure.
And maybe cursing more than they would typically do. And you're right. I believe we don't need to do that. It's beautiful to be who you are. It's so empowering.
And let that flow in whatever areas because if you don't spend time working on who you are and being who you are, no one's going to be that for you. You're unique. God created you unique and for a purpose and for a calling. Walk in it.
Honor it.
Yes.
What has God done in your life? What's your faith in your life? Who is Annie without the faith? Who is Annie with her faith?
Annie without faith is nothing. And Annie with her faith is everything that she is. I mean, I can't even, and it doesn't mean that someone that has faith doesn't go through difficulty or what have you, but there's a relationship piece there that I'm so grateful to God for, and being able to have that relationship with God on that kind of level, and knowing that He has your back no matter what and walk with you in good and bad and everything, is something that I can't personally, like everything, all my gifts, all my talents, whatever, when people honor me, to me, they're honoring God, because that's where I derive my strength and that's where I derive my gifts.
In your professional career or in your personal life, what's the biggest miracle that you've seen, the hand of God in your life? And I don't necessarily, it's just that I know that's so much of part of who you are and what you believe. And a lot of times you have to hang on to something that is going to drive you through the challenges.
So, I mean, it's an everyday thing, but I'll give you an example. I always make sure that anytime we start a new project, that we make sure that we pray for our employees, that we're always make sure that we're praying for safety and for no one to get hurt. I mean, those to me are big miracles, that folks can go home to their families. I know it might not seem that big, but to me that is.
Absolutely. What about COVID? When COVID hit, we were deemed essential. We were supposed to continue to work.
Yes.
And the COVID guidelines became a policy overnight.
Yes, construction kind of paved the way for everybody else.
So what was that like in your company?
So I think we have a way to thrive under those circumstances. So when things get thrown at us, first thing we did was communicate with the whole team. We started the Zoom piece. Definitely very fortunate to have had all the technology in place to be able to make that transition. So that wasn't an issue as far as that transitioning piece for office personnel or being able to communicate via Zoom. But that's one thing since I wasn't going to be able to see everyone on a consistent basis, especially on the office piece, we made sure that we were meeting via Zoom once a week. And that was one aspect that we kind of maintain now, even after that time frame when COVID first initially hit.
Yeah, that was the same for us too. Mm-hmm. We even had the police showing up as OSHA officers in a job site multiple times. They were the OSHA officers. And, they would check if the guidelines were in place. You had anybody die because of COVID? Any employee? Thank God. And for a woman to thrive or a man to thrive, regardless, anybody, whether you're young or older, or you went through the school of hard knocks, you started as a laborer and you took that path, or you went to college, studied engineering, architecture, for you to thrive in this industry. And when I mean thrive, it includes your balance, that at the end of your journey, you have constructed other than a profession with your family, whatever is important for you. What do you think is required for a person to thrive in this industry?
I think it goes back to what I had mentioned. You have to know when those times are to take a break. You have to make sure that you make time for your family. All those components, you got to make sure that you really are intentional about keeping a balance. Otherwise, the construction component will always drive you first.
Why do you think people do that? Because I think there's more people that the construction pace drives your life, and it's always there, but you don't know how to take the time off for your health, to exercise, to eat well. Right. And a lot of people relieve stress with drugs, alcohol.
Sure.
Why? Yeah. Why do you think it happens in the industry?
Which part?
They're not allowing yourself to have a balanced life. I've met a lot of business owners there's many that you end the company, your journey, you're about to retire. And maybe the example in your father I know is different. You're about to retire. The construction is very cyclical. So maybe when you retire, things are not going well. But then your health is not ideal. Maybe your relationship with your kids are not great because you prioritize the work and the projects and the timelines and the stress, and you never gave yourself permission to have that time with your family and your kids, or you never gave yourself permission to rest, take vacation, reset. And even with your spouses, some people suffer, it's very easy to neglect your relationships and just focus on the business. What do you think that happens?
Again, if you're not intentional, if you don't give yourself permission to do that, it's going to happen. It's the nature of the beast that it's construction doesn't, I guess it sleeps sometimes, but it's just, it's an ongoing. If you have to go back to discipline, you have to be disciplined enough to say, okay, these, I'm going to need this, I'm going to need this, I'm going to need that. Otherwise, for instance, even as an owner, an employee, you don't know unless the employee tells you. You're not going to tell your employee, hey, I think you need unless it's really obvious and they're pulling hairs or something, or something's really obvious. But typically you yourself, you have to find that inner strength within yourself and that realistic peace within yourself and just say, you know what, I think I do need a break. And, and go to your boss, go to this and say, hey, I need a couple of days off.
You have to be connected with yourself.
Yes.
Not disconnected. So connection is so huge in our lives and in our industry. Huge. I know you're very involved with many different organizations and you've been doing it for a while. Talk to me about ABC, Association of Building Contractors. This is where we met.
Yes.
We met when you were the chair of the Miami-Dade Council, which I'm the chair now.
Yes. Congrats, very good. You did a great job.
Well, COVID has done a number, right? We're trying to get all back together, all the pieces together. But tell us about ABC, what they do. I am very proud of ABC because of the passion they have with not only workforce development, but also the apprenticeship program that they have that is really very well organized and is very successful.
So it's one of the biggest ones in Florida. I don't know if you're so ABC's apprenticeship program is the biggest one in Florida. There's also the legislative aspect. The one that people mostly know about is the networking piece, but that's not it. It's the legislative aspect. So one of the reasons why construction was considered essential was because of ABC. ABC's connection with the local municipalities, the state entities and all that, and was able to explain the importance that construction had and has in Florida. So that was a big piece that people don't realize many times of the impact that had, and that ABC is constantly looking at different aspects or priorities that the construction industry has, and make sure that they are mentioned to our state, local officials. So all that for just about $2,000 a year, really per member, covers a lot. It really does. And I mean, I'm happy to be serving also on their board and on their executive committee now, and it's very rewarding and an honor.
Yeah, are you the only woman now in the board?
Yes. Yeah. And
you probably will be the first women
chair,
right?
Yes.
Chair?
Yes. Mm-hmm. For the Florida East Coast chapter.
That's awesome.
Yes.
How does that make you feel?
Good. I'm excited about it. It's a good team. It's a great feeling to also know, because that your colleagues also view you in that light to lead the organization
and respect you.
Yeah.
And you see, this is where I there's no boundaries for a woman in this industry.
Correct.
I think the boundary is in your head. It's in the head. A lot of times people think, and it can be tough, when you're raising a family, you're in the industry because of the timeline, and it is, because I've done it. You're raising kids, but someone said the other day, you pace yourself. So anybody goes at the pace they can. But in the end, it's a beautiful industry. You build people in the process.
Yes.
And you build yourself too. What's the biggest transformation you've experienced in the last 10 years in your own soul, as a person? Because all these challenges that we have, they're here to show us something of ourselves that needs to evolve, that it needs to transform. That's my hallucination.
I would say that for me, intentionality. You don't know how much time you may have with the person, and just being very intentional about that time that you have together. Quality time. And I think that probably, I don't know if it was the construction industry or my father's passing, but making sure that every moment that it's not distracted, that you're totally all in. There was a speaker, I forgot his name, but he was talking about moments, and whatever's behind you, you can't go to it. So why worry about it? Whatever's in front of you, you can't get it yet. So what's the point? What you have is that present moment. And a lot of times, because as we know, it's a stressful industry and you might have lots of things going on. And he said, if you find yourself a little bit off, where you're unfocused, ask yourself at that very moment, is this the best thing is this the most important thing I should be doing right now? And if it is, that's great. And if it's not, then refocus and do what you're supposed to be doing. So I would say that. That
tells me that when you've been challenged, you have maybe being a little bit of at ease at some point, and then you learn, no, you know what, this is where I want to be. This is what I want to be doing. The rest will be taken care of. Probably your faith had a little bit to do with it. Yes. Yeah, I need a little help here, please. Because this is what I want to do and where I want to be. Where are you in 5 years?
Where am I in 5 years? Good question.
Talking about intentionality.
I know. I would like to reserve that for another podcast, maybe.
Really?
Yes.
That much?
I'd like to reserve that.
Okay, so what's going to be the name of that podcast? You know, you gotta tell me something. You have to tell me something.
No, you'll have to wait. We'll talk later.
Is it because,
off the record?
Is it because you don't know, or is it because it's too juicy?
It's close to the chest right now, yeah.
I'm so happy. I'm so proud of you. Thank you so much for what you've done. So you're going to have to tell me what's going to be the name of that podcast. I'm intrigued now. It's going to have to be, what, an hour long?
Oh, we'll see. We'll talk more about it off the record.
Oh, I think I touched a nerve there. Tell someone that is trying to enter the industry. You know, they heard you and construction. Maybe they didn't know. Maybe they're thinking it's for a man. Like, you know, many people have that's the idea, the impression they have, or they don't have the tools they need. They don't have the knowledge they need. It seems complicated. I don't know. And the naysayers. What would you say to someone that could potentially be thinking about construction as a profession?
So number one, whatever you set out to do, you will be able to do it. That's number one. Number two, you're listening to this podcast. You'll be able to contact us and we will be able to help you get into the industry.
That's a good one.
Right? And I guess the third one is really, it's not, I can't tell you that it's an easy industry, but it's not, but it's well worth the effort. There's no other industry that you can come in really not knowing anything. And if you put your mind to it and really work hard and really stick to it, that you yourself will be able to go wherever it is that you want. The limitations really are up to you.
Are in your head.
Completely.
We are limitless beings.
Limitless.
And this is a teachable industry. That's for sure.
It is.
You don't have to be, but you do have to have mindset.
Mindset, that's the biggest
mindset
component.
And psychology. That's huge. Thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here in this journey with me. I can't wait to collaborate in that, whatever you have in your head. You know, I'm asking you in the next second, as soon as I turn off the phone, the microphone, and I can't wait for us to partner and help create opportunities for other people. There's so many people out there that would be great for this industry, and this industry can provide a fulfilled life for so many.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. God bless.
Thank you for listening to Thriving in Construction, the podcast with Patricia Bonilla. If you enjoyed this episode and you would like to help support the podcast, please share it with others and leave a rating or review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. If you have any suggestions or any related topics you would like us to tackle in our future episodes, feel free to reach Patricia by sending her a message through the website anchor.fm/thrivinginconstruction or find her on LinkedIn. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week here in Thriving in Construction, the podcast.